Here I'm going to show how to design this part here called the 120 gusset. Basically this is going to start as a sketch and then we're going to make a 3D model. Looking more closely at the actual sketch, we can see that the dimensions are actually in millimeters and the central hole is 18 millimeters in diameter. And then we have these three legs that are equally spaced around the circle that has a 100 millimeter diameter. We have a 6 millimeter hole here, and then this 12 millimeter circle here, and then a 20-degree angle on these legs as they go out. And then we have these little kind of triangular cutouts or drop down shapes that are a little bit cut out, not fully all the way through on each side. Specifically, they're 2.5 millimeters deep on each side. So what I'm going to do is start with a sketch, and I'm going to do one of these legs and then make a circular pattern to do the others. So let's start with the 18 millimeter circle, then we'll go with the 6 millimeter and then the 12 millimeter circle here that is 50 millimeters away from the center. So going to Inventor, we're going to go File, New, and your screen will look like this. What we want to do is go to Metric and go to Standard Millimeter and go Create. We're going to make a sketch, 2D sketch on the XY plane. I'm going to start with a circle that is 18 millimeters in diameter. And then over here, I'm going to make a couple circles, one that's 6 and the other one that is 12, making sure that they're concentric. Now we want to dimension the distance between here and here to be 50 millimeters. Now notice that this is still purple, and that's because I haven't constrained this to be on the line, and I can kind of drag it around. So we should do a horizontal constraint to constrain this to be horizontal with the origin. Notice it changes the color to white. So now that we have that, I'm going to draw a couple lines that come out just in the general shape that I think that this should look. We will get the dimensions in a minute. It really doesn't matter exactly where this ends. We'll figure that out later. Hit Escape after you've made each of those. I do want to dimension the angle between these two to be 20 degrees. To do that, I can hit the dimension button, or D for short, click here, and then I can set that to 20 degrees. One thing that we have to ensure is that the angle between this and this is 10 degrees. They're not necessarily the same, and that should be 10 degrees between this leg and the x-axis here. So I'm going to expand the origin tab so I can see the x-axis, or I can at least select it. Notice when I click on it, it's selected here. And so what I'm going to do is just go Dimension, click here, and then go over here to click x-axis, and then I can set that. You can see that it was not 10 degrees. It was close, but it wasn't. So now that's 10 degrees, so we now know that the other one will be 10 degrees. So once we have that, I do want to make sure that this line is tangent to this circle, and this is tangent to the circle there. Now we need to draw a couple of lines like this to get that cutout shape. Let's go back to the drawing. You can see that the cutout is 3 millimeters from the wall there, 3, and that's going to be 3 from here. And since this is a 6 and a 12 diameter circle, or a 6 and a 3 diameter radius, this is also 3, and this is also going to be 3 millimeters here, because this is a 24 it's a 24 millimeter diameter or a 12 millimeter radius, and this would be a 9 millimeter radius. So basically the gap all the way around between the edges and the circles is all 3 millimeters. And then these have these rounded what we call fillets that are 2.4 millimeters on each of the 4 corners there. So going back to the model, I do need a couple of extra lines that are parallel to these lines. An easy way to do that is use offset, and if I click offset, I could go down, and then I can just set that to be 3, and that will make that parallel. You can see that there's a parallel constraint that just shows up. I can offset again and then hit 3. And so I have those two. And notice I also have this shape here because the distance here is 3 millimeters. That's this distance between here and here. And I could check that if I wanted, but we could just do the math from looking at the two circles. But notice that distance is 3. Now I need to get a circle here that is offset 3 millimeters from here. Lots of ways to do that. We could actually make a new circle. We could do an offset here that is 3 millimeters off of the original. Or I'd like to just show you another way is we could use the center point arc, or the center point arc. Clicking in the middle here, we could then go out here and click, and then move our cursor down here and click. Now notice that they're not quite ending in the right spot because I didn't make these lines the exact length. And so what we want to do is just use a coincident constraint, and to ensure that these are coincident. I think that first one I did snap in, so that coincident constraint already exists. That's what it says, but this one doesn't. And so we can go this point here to this point there. And then we do need to dimension this, though, to be 12 millimeters. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is trim some of this excess stuff away over here. I need to get rid of this and this, and this and this. As soon as I do that, notice everything turned purple because it doesn't have this dimension anymore. So I need to make sure that this is dimensioned here at 6 millimeters in a radius, or 12 in diameter, and this has to be dimensioned here. Okay, so now that everything is constrained, I can go to the fillet button and make this 2.4 millimeters and put in all those arcs. And the way you do that is just click this edge and this edge, and you just keep going around, and that creates all of those fillets. So now that I'm done with that, the next step is to make a circular pattern of these and make 3 of them. And so to approach that, I'm going to hit the circular pattern. Brings up this window. I need to select the geometry. Now notice when I make a rectangle from the upper left and I go down to the lower right, it's a red rectangle. And if I let go, notice it doesn't select everything. The red rectangle only selects what is completely enclosed by that red rectangle. And so I want to show you a different way. So if I hit the circular pattern and start from the lower right and go up, I get a green rectangle. And basically the green rectangle selects everything that green rectangle touches, even if it wasn't fully enclosed by the green rectangle. One thing that I do want to do is make sure I select these guys. Those are actually the geometry of the points before I put the fillet where this curve and this line met up. And so I'm just going to select those. Now I want to make a pattern. Notice that the circle is selected. I could deselect the circle by hitting Control and click. I don't need to make a pattern of the circle, but I want to make a pattern of everything else, so I can hit Axis and then select the circle or select the center. It really doesn't matter. The axis is going to be around the Z-axis there. I don't want 6 of them. I want 3 instances, and then I can hit OK. We're getting close. The final thing that we need to do is figure out what's going on here. Notice that these lines don't touch, and we actually, according to the drawing, need an arc here that has a radius of 20, and that's true for all 3. And so what I'm going to do is just grab each one and drag them back just a little bit, where I would guess maybe an arc would fit between. And then I'm going to use the arc, but I'm going to use this arc, the 3-point arc, where I'm going to basically, instead of hitting the center point, I'm going to click the 2 end points, snap those in, and then make an arc that has a radius of 20. Now notice I was careful in placing my arc, and it created 2 coincident constraints for me. That's what those 2 are. But the arc doesn't seem quite right, and the reason why is it's not tangent. So basically I'm going to click here and make this arc tangent with this, and it moved that line back, that line segment back, and I'm going to click this arc and make it tangent with that. Now it smooths that out. Also, it turns the arc white because now it is fully constrained. I need to do the same thing to the other sides. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click here and here. I'm going to move my mouse so that it is arc like that, and then I'm just going to type in 20, and then I'm going to make sure that the arc is actually tangent. Notice it says it will over constrain. It looks like it's already fully constrained and tangent. And one way to confirm that is if we hit this button here that says show constraints, and then I can hit this. Hopefully it shows that it is tangent. It actually doesn't, and so I'm a little confused there, but it is fully constrained. Like if I click this one and show constraints, it does show that those are tangent as well. Okay, let's do the third one. Click here and here. We'll move that, make it 20, and then again, it may not let us do the tangent constraint, but everything is fully constrained because this is white now. So now that I'm done with that, I can finish the sketch. A lot going on there. And so finishing the sketch, the next step is to do an extrusion to make it into 3 dimensions. And this is 8 millimeters thick. And so we're going to hit the extrude button and select the geometry that we want to extrude, which is that. Now I want to make it 8 millimeters instead of 10. But what I want to do, instead of extruding just in the default, which is the positive Z direction, as you can see the arrow here is positive Z, I want to do a symmetric extrude. And I want to extrude half in the positive Z and half in the negative Z, and the original sketch is at the middle of the part. So once I've done that, I'm going to hit OK. So now we have this, which is close, but it does not have the material in here. And if we look closely at the drawing here, that rib that basically fills this is 3 millimeters thick. And there's a couple ways of doing this, but the way I'm going to do is just add material on 3 millimeters by making a new sketch on the center plane, which is the XY plane. Notice I can select it right here. Then I'm going to hit project geometry and just click here, which gives me all of the, basically takes this geometry and draws lines onto my sketch. And then I'm going to hit E for extrude, or I could just go finish sketch and hit extrude. And I'm going to select each of these and change that to 3 millimeters. And I want to make sure that it is on a symmetric extrusion. And then if I go OK, now it did that extrusion. And if I measure, M is the shortcut for measure. If I select this plane and this plane, it should be 2.5 millimeters. And if I go over here and select, hit M and select this plane and this plane, it is also 2.5 millimeters. And so if I go to the drawing, you can see that those cutouts, it's kind of hard to see, but basically the distance between here and where the little ribs are 2.5 millimeters in from each side. So the part is now designed. So make sure you save the part and get the snip. The way to get the snip into the assignment is just Windows Shift S. We can grab this here and then go to your assignment and paste that in. It'd be nice to resize it here. Make it a little bit smaller. And then also what I want you to include is basically a snip of this window as well. Windows Shift S, which is the model browser. And so I want you to give me a snip of this work so I can see what you've done and the steps you've used to create this. And what I'm looking for is what extrusions you use to create it. Sometimes I see, dozens of extra sketches and extra extrusions, and that isn't really what you need to do. That works, but it is not best practice. And so I'm looking for best practice in what you're doing there. So you can just paste the model browser next to that so I can see what you've done. This is not a complete part yet, or you haven't completed the steps here. We've done this bullet here and this bullet here. What we need to do next is create a measure drawing, and I'll do that in a different video.